Hi there, my name is Russ Reynolds, and it's unfortunate that I have to make this video. It's what I want to do in this video is provide a warning about Matthew Meyers from Best Friends Pet Transportation. And we decided to hire his services and put our dog in his care. I guess it's about 12 days ago now, and about 10 days ago, so 2 days after our dog was put into his care, our dog passed away in his care. So in this video, what I want to do is kind of just present the facts for you. Let it be a warning if you decide to use this company, and I'll try to succinctly go through everything that happened and give you an idea of what we went through, so you can make a decision when hiring him or hiring another company and be forewarned about what could happen. So just some notes quickly, and I'm going to get into some of the stuff that I found out after our dog unfortunately passed away at the bottom of this video, at the bottom of this document, at the end of this video. So I'll try to keep this as quick as I can. We were told that we'd receive pictures and videos. So Buddy, our dog's name was Buddy. Buddy was with them for approximately 44 hours before we got the call that he had died. That was 10 days ago on a Sunday night, totally out of the blue. And we were told that we'd receive pictures and videos before that happened. We never received one. Instead, we had to actually pry them to get updates. And my wife was particularly on them to get updates from them about how Buddy was doing, etc. And it seemed like very evasive answers. And definitely they were not proactive, and certainly didn't send us any pictures or videos. The only picture we ever received from him was when I demanded one as proof of his passing. That's the only picture we got when he was passed away. I believe that led to Buddy's demise, ultimately, their lack of planning, their lack of organizational skills, and lack of communication. So Buddy was supposed to be picked up on a Wednesday morning, and he finally was picked up Friday at 9:30 p.m. So they were about, over 50 hours late. Things were so disorganized that pets had to be in a vehicle much longer than they needed to be. We lived in Belize at the time, and they picked Buddy up in a town called Corozal where we lived, which is about a 4.5 hour drive to a town called Placencia. So they had been to Placencia that day, and they ended up having to go back to Placencia the next day again. I have no idea why, but there were just so many instances of wasted time like that were never explained. But the end result being the dogs were in the vehicle, the animals were in the vehicle much longer than they had to be, including Buddy, of course. And first, things like this, there were delay after delay after delay, and there was zero communication unless we hounded them. And even when we did hound them for communication to figure out what was going on, the communication was really spotty. It was kind of evasive and defensive at times, and never transparent about what was actually happening. When we originally booked, the trip was only supposed to be from northern Belize to the U.S., which is probably about a 2-day drive, depending on, how fast you drive, traffic, and that kind of stuff. And he mentioned trying to get there in 3 days, which seemed reasonable given it was from northern Belize to the U.S. But as soon as we paid, right after we paid, then he informed us that he had to go to Guatemala and Honduras as well, which obviously added substantial time, not only just driving distance, but another couple of borders to cross with the animals and have them checked as well. So that significantly extended how long the drive was going to be. But that we were only told that after we paid. We were never told that Buddy wouldn't actually be with Matthew Meyers. Through his communication, he made it sound like there were 3 drivers all in the same vehicle, and only after we left did we learn that was not the case. On this particular trip, he tried to take 20 dogs from all over Central America back to the U.S. And I think it was in part because the CDC was changing the rules, so a lot of people wanted to get their dogs in before an August 1st deadline. But it was also, I think he overextended himself, and it was greed on Matthew's part, and that contributed to our dog passing. A couple of red flags that we should have, this was a red flag that I should have paid attention to more than I did, unfortunately. There was no form for dietary restrictions or instructions. We wrote our dog's feeding instructions on the box, but when we dropped Buddy off, the driver really didn't seem interested in the feeding restrictions. He just kind of said, okay, I shouldn't say instructions, the feeding instructions. He just kind of said, okay. He also seemed very uninterested in the health certification and other paperwork that we sent. So we sent all of Buddy's rabies history. We sent the health certification that he needed to get across the border. And everything was like an after the fact. The driver didn't seem to really, even care about that stuff. And since then, we've learned that maybe the animals weren't being fed properly, which kind of jives with them not seeming interested in the dietary instructions. So they claimed that our dog Buddy broke his kennel. This is totally out of Buddy's character. Buddy would not break a kennel. He was a big, gentle dog, and would never harm anything. Would never break out of a kennel, unless we suspected if that happened at all, it only happened because Buddy was in distress. And we suspect that it may have been heat exhaustion and improper ventilation that killed him. And maybe that's why he had busted out of his kennel because he was in distress. And that's what we suspect. And we suspect it even more after learning some of the stories I'm going to share with you in a minute at the bottom of this document. Of course, Matthew takes no responsibility for what happened. He blames it on Buddy being old and unhealthy, which is a total crock. Yeah, Buddy is getting a little bit on the older side, but he was still in great health. And in fact, he'd been on tons of road trips with us. He's been all across the U.S. He'd even traveled in planes on a boat. And he'd been cleared by our vet just 2 days before his travel. And the vet told us that he wouldn't be surprised if Buddy lived at least another 2 years. He was in such good health. So yeah, he was a little bit on the older side, but definitely he was in great health. So I don't buy Matthew's excuse at all. Just seems to be what he's trying to say to save his business. All right, so that's it for the general notes. This was some communication that he had with my wife. What I want to show here is just how spotty the communication was. So this was us waiting for him. Or he said is a driver crossing the border to meet us in a town called Corozal. And, we wanted to try to nail down a time to meet the driver. This is to drop Buddy off. We wanted to try to get a time to meet the driver because obviously we had things to do. We were leaving the country the day after flying, and Buddy was to meet us in Houston. And so we, as you can imagine, if we were leaving the country, then we had a million things that we needed to do. And that was fine, but we just wanted to know kind of roughly when he was going to be there. So apparently they were supposed to be there around 11 in Corozal. His driver just had to go from Belize City to Corozal, which is a 2.5-hour drive. So we were targeting around 11, and Matthew confirmed that. And then, at 1 o'clock here, you can see my wife had asked no update yet. So this is 2 hours after that they had planned to be there. Another half hour later, she called, nobody answered. She texted him back, "Can you please call me? We're losing faith here. At this rate, you won't be in Guatemala until Sunday." He was supposed to come direct to Corozal. Last communication was at 9 a.m. and it's now 1:30 and there's no update. We're getting frustrated. And to spare the length of this video, I haven't shown all the miscommunications prior to this, where there was delay after delay after delay with very, very little or no communication at all, and usually only at us prodding to have communication. So this is why my wife was getting pretty frustrated, Lisa. He was supposed to be there at 11. It's now 1:30 and they're not even answering and letting us know what's going on. And so at 10 to 2, he says, we're doing everything we can to catch up, right? But it still doesn't tell us what's going on. That's what I mean about the communication being very evasive. He's still not saying what's happening. And then he says, at this point, I'm not trying to give specific timelines because I just don't know yet, which is like so strange to me. I mean, you should have this mapped out ahead, and I know delays can happen, but to be so evasive that now it's like 3 hours late and basically saying we'll get there when we get there, when we had to drive like 20 minutes to meet him, etc. And he had informed us by phone that they were headed to a town called Plasencia. I mentioned this earlier. My wife and I happened to live in Plasencia for 3 years. So we know that from the town we were in, there's at least a 3-hour drive each way. And then they claimed they had to pick up dogs on the way. And so my wife let him know that's an 8-hour delay for us. And that she's really tired of the delays and no communication, etc. And of course, no message back. But that 8-hour delay, they were supposed to be there at 11 that day. That was the Friday. They're supposed to be there at 11. And now we're looking at, that's 7 p.m. with an 8-hour delay. And so they ended up getting there at 9:30 p.m. So it was more than an 8-hour delay even. And this is really just contributing to the lack of communication, the lack of transparency, how disorganized they were. And that's partly what led to the dogs being on the vehicle longer than they had to. And I think what contributed to my dog's demise, unfortunately. So then on Sunday morning, so this is Friday night, they picked him up Sunday morning, checking in to see how Buddy's doing and how his night went. Of course, there's no communication back. And at this point, I was trying to communicate with his driver as well, because we'd gotten the driver's phone number, but neither of them were very, we had to prod them all for communication. Again, still no pictures, no communication. This on Monday is after Buddy had died the day before. And now we're trying, if you can imagine this, we're in the U.S., Buddy dies in Guatemala somewhere. They were supposed to go to Guatemala, but Buddy dies in Guatemala. We're wanting to make sure that his body is respected and, he's brought to a vet and properly cremated, etc. So we can at least have his remains. And I don't trust anything that they're saying at this point. So I don't even know for sure if the body's on the truck. Anyway, so the driver says he has him. He's on his way to Villahermosa, a town in Mexico. And my wife asked, where are you? We want a location, because they were supposed to be there last night, as you'll see in a minute. This was like a full day after the dog died. and they're still not where they're supposed to be, which is only a few hours away from the border. I know it's a little bit confusing, a lot of details here, but I just showing how disorganized things were. And then he says he had a problem with the truck and had to fix it. And this is the problem with it, right? We want a location. We want to know when they're going to be at the crematorium. The vet was doing the cremation, and they don't answer. They said, I had a problem and I had to fix it. Well, that's not what we asked you, right? And so my wife has had enough. It's been, I don't show all the messages in here, but it's been days and days and days of messed up miscommunication. And so, she's clearly pissed off here. And then he says, I'll be there at 3:30. I'm going as fast as I can. I'm sorry. So that is, again, just showing how it had to be us that prodded the communication all the time. And it was really like, in retrospect, obviously I wish we never sent Buddy, but it's crazy how everything was so disorganized and the communication was just horrible. And then it continued after my wife Lisa had done most of the communication in the beginning. And then after Buddy died, she was quite distraught. Obviously I was too, but I took over the communication a little bit. Here he's making kind of excuses, even though he says, I'm not trying to make excuses. Just want to let you know that he was comfortable and at Byron's feet all day. And then I said, of course I have no, and this is the point. I said, of course I have no way of knowing what happened. All I know for sure is your communication and organizational skills suck. So in my mind, that must have contributed to his death, given he was perfectly healthy when we left him in your care. And then basically he starts kind of spinning things. Some dogs are super nervous, and I've been afraid they miss their owners too much. But he's been calm sitting at our feet. He's probably received more attention than any other dog I've taken. I rarely allowed dogs out of the kennels. Most of them are too nervous and pace around too much. He was only in kennel for about 8 hours while we left Belize, which I don't believe at all. And then he says they found a crematorium in Tenoseki, which is about an hour inside of Mexico. They're going to have to do some finagling to get him through the border. Then they'll be somewhere tonight. We need to cross now and be offline for a bit. And then I said, keep me informed, as I'd like to know when he's properly laying to rest. So he says at 6:46, then this is the Monday, 6:46 p.m. He says, we're in Mexico and we're headed north, actually taking him to Villahermosa. It's a couple hours further north, but it's a much bigger city. And then he says something about Alexander having family there. I don't even know what he's saying half the time, as you'll see in a minute. So that's at 6:46 p.m. So he should be there at Sunday night. Sorry, I think I said Monday. That would be the Sunday night. So he should be there. He says it's a few hours to Villahermosa. So he should be there, 9:46. I don't have details yet for the cremation, but I'll let you know tomorrow. And then, so 9:46 p.m., he should have been in Villahermosa. So Monday morning, this is the next morning, probably close to 12 hours after he should have been there. I said, please update me with what's happening. We need to make sure he is properly cremated when we get his remains. And he says, place isn't open until 9. I asked him the name of the crematorium because I wanted to contact him myself and be in touch with him. And then he tells me at 10:39 on the Monday morning. So this is like 16 hours after he said it was a 3-hour drive. He says, we're not there yet. We've just been speaking to him on the phone. And I said, when will you be there? And he says, I'll text you when we get there. So again, not answering. Everything's like totally dodging and half-truths and mistruths. When you ask somebody, when will you be there? The answer isn't, I'll text you when we get there. When he's had our dog's remains in his vehicle for well over 12 hours at this point. I suspect closer to 24 hours, but I don't know for sure. And so I asked him, so Buddy is still in your vehicle? And he said, yes, of course. As though I'm stupid. We are taking him to the crematorium. Again, now this is like 17 hours after he was leaving the border, which for a 3-hour drive. So I said, what the fuck do you mean? Of course. You were supposedly only a few hours away yesterday afternoon. And he still doesn't tell me. I will let you know when we get there. And then he says, of course I'm going to pass him off. I'm not going to pass him off to anyone else. But at this point, I wasn't so sure. And then I called him on what he said earlier. He was going to leave them with Alexander's family. And then he says it's Moise's family. So he's just like all over the place, just mistruths, half-truths, maybe confused himself all the time. I really don't know. And then, so 11:42 on the Monday. So this is like, again, well after he left the border. And he's still not answering me. I said, come on, man, you read my message. Give me an answer. And 3 hours after that, he says, we'll be there soon. So he's still not like coming front and being forthright and answering the questions. This is the kind of communication you can expect from him if you would hire his services, which I totally recommend you don't. And then again, I'll let you know when we get there and give you all the information. So he's still not giving me an answer. I said, I really hope you have him because I want a picture of him at the vet. And it just continues here. He sort of admonishes me at one point. If you read the tone of our more recent interactions, they have not been particularly cordial, because he never did get back to me after he dropped him off the vet, even though he said he would. 10 times I was in communication with the vet, so they told me, but he never did tell me. So he left my dog there without telling me. I don't think he was the one that even left the dog. And so he's like admonishing me for not being cordial, which is just crazy when my dog died in his care and he doesn't seem to care, doesn't communicate, etc. And which is what I said here. And our dog died in your care, and we believe with all our heart it was due to your negligence, especially after all we've heard since. You expect me to be cordial. This will come into play a little bit in a minute. It's a communication that the screenshot of something I had that I sent him. I said, you might love animals, but you shouldn't be taking care of any of them. I wouldn't let you look after a house plant, and you're a pathological liar, so I don't believe any of what you're typing. You told Jill you'd never charge us, and you would never charge Desiree. Obviously, you don't know, the watcher doesn't know who these people are, but it'll become clearer in a second when I tell you their stories. In case you forgot which lies you're telling, here's what you said to Jill. So what I'll do is I'll come back to that. It'll make more sense. So here's some experiences of others. What happened was I posted my experience on Facebook, and others came forward after I posted our experience. And I wish they had come forward before, and we never would have shipped Buddy with them, obviously, but that's the way it is. So hopefully other people see this video and they think twice before sending their pet. This person said, my friend's German Shepherd is currently with him, and this is why he's late and not communicating. So just confirming, this guy's behind all the time, and his communication is really lousy. And it's important, if you have an animal that is supposedly in his care, that he communicates, is on time, and is forthright with his communication, not like pulling teeth. Another person said, oh no, I know they lost a dog in Mexico last year, and the owner had to fly down to search for her. It took weeks, but she was finally found. Can you imagine? They lost a dog in Mexico, and the owner had to travel down from the States to search for weeks to find the dog. Another person told me privately, so sorry for your loss in the dog. We used the same guy, and we picked our dog up at the Belize, Guatemala border. She was in full-blown heat stroke. We almost lost her as well. So again, this is one of the reasons why I wonder if our dog passed that way when having heat stroke. Another person said, I'm so sorry to hear about your dog. My husband and I used them, and we were so pissed. The man is a liar. He doesn't communicate with you after getting your dog. And as you said, he is so disorganized. Lila has not been the same since the move. I know a lot is a change in environment, but she seems more timid and anxious. I would never recommend this asshole to take anyone's dog. When we told him we were unhappy with the service, he refused to refund any of our money and just said, I got your dog here. That was my only job. Somebody else asked, is this who Desiree used? And I mentioned Desiree above. I'll go back to that screenshot in a minute. And as this person confirms, 3 of Desiree's dogs died in the man's care as well. And apparently that happened just a few weeks before our buddy went with him. And this person says, I'm so sorry this happened to you. We use the same company to bring our dog down from the States. My only positive is that he did arrive to us healthy. The rest of the experience was an absolute mess of terrible communication and changing dates. We tried to give him the benefit of the doubt, but only because our boy ended up with us safe. So just another testament to how crappy the communication is with this guy. And then Jill. So Jill was a neighbor of ours, lived close to us in Belize, and her dogs were on the same trip. And she said, my dogs are on the same trip as Buddy, and it was a bad scene. The communication was horrible. Matt lied about where he was. I had air tags on my dogs, so I was able to track them, but the trip took far longer than it should have. So she out and out caught him lying about where he was because the dog had air tags, so she could track him. I had to get my dogs back at the border. She sent somebody down to pick the dogs up at the border because she wasn't able to do it herself. And because she was afraid that the dogs couldn't last to get all the way back to her in Austin. So she had a friend go pick them up. They were full of piss, and their crates were both full of piss, and I was so disappointed. I did so much research on this guy, and so did I. I wish I had done some other research that I'll show you in a minute, and even went to San Pedro to talk to people that had used them frequently, and I heard nothing but good things. I think we dog owners are just relieved to have our pets home and don't want to tell or relive the horrible experience. I think we owe it to each other to make sure this never happens again. I feel horrible about Buddy and saddened he didn't make it home. So her dogs were she felt that they were totally neglected. They were dehydrated. She felt like they hadn't eaten. They were full of urine. Their kennels were full of urine, and they were on the same trip as our buddy who passed away. And so when she confronted him about it, about about the money portion of it. He said, I'm a very reasonable person. Obviously, I did not charge Desiree. I would also not charge Lisa. Lisa's my wife. So Desiree confirmed that she paid $3,000 to Matt and that he never refunded her money, even though 3 of her dogs died in the trip. And we paid him $1,500 up front, which he knows damn well we did because he set up a special bank account because we're Canadian. We're able to pay him with Venmo like he wanted originally. So he set up Wise, TransferWise, for us to pay him. So he knows damn well that we paid him $1,500 up front. And although he claims to refund money when people are unhappy, it's another instance where he certainly isn't forthcoming refunding any of our money. I don't really care about the money. It's not what this is about at all. But it just is another pattern of his lying and just lying and not doing the right thing. He didn't, after 3 of this lady's 4 dogs died on a trip, he didn't refund any of her money. And then somebody else said he didn't offer to refund any of her money, even though he claims he did. And then, up here when somebody else commented and they said that, he didn't refund their money either. Can't remember what it was, but. All right. So enough of what happened. At some research that I figured out after this all happened, and I looked deeper into this guy. I thought I looked deep enough into him. He had good reviews, but I think the only reason he had good reviews is because people were scared to come forward. And as long as their dog was alive, they were scared to do anything about it. I found out after digging a little bit deeper after all this happened that there's a Matthew Meyers, where I've highlighted in this article that I found on LinkedIn. Matthew Meyers of Knox County, Tennessee, pled guilty to, I think this was in 2018, to Medicaid fraud totaling about $94,000. That's where I saw this. And I'll put this link below the video, but I found this article that discusses a Matthew Meyers of Tennessee, and who was a nurse practitioner who actually, the article, I'll link below the video so you can see it yourself, but the article showed that this Matthew Meyers of Tennessee provided unlicensed treatment to, I think, hundreds of people. He secretly used doctors' credentials and signed orders that were essentially illegal. And he did it to fool pharmacies into filling prescriptions that he wasn't authorized to write. So I'm not 100% sure that this is the same guy, but he told us he was from Tennessee, and he's got Facebook posts that indicate that he's leaving from Tennessee. And he told us more than one occasion that he was from Tennessee. He also told us that he had been a nurse practitioner. So it's certainly, I'll let you be the judge whether it's the same guy or not, but it's pretty darn coincidental that a Matthew Meyers from Tennessee, who was also a nurse practitioner, was the person indicated in this felony. And I definitely believe it must have been him. All right, I think that's it. This video has gone on long enough. None of this will bring back our poor dog, Buddy. The bottom line is that when we ship Buddy with Matthew Meyers and Best Friends Pet Transportation, we put him in his care. We were a little bit nervous about the situation, of course, like anybody might be, but the dog was in great health. He'd just been checked by a veterinarian and cleared for the travel. He'd done lots of road trips and traveling in the past, so being in a vehicle was not something that would stress him out. Was great around other animals, great around people, so there was never any problem with it being socialized, so we weren't worrying about that aspect at all. And then after we put them into care, the communication was just a nightmare. Well, before, the communication was bad too, but it was just a nightmare. And Buddy died, in less than 2 days in their care. And we believe it was from improper ventilation and or heat exhaustion. And the stories that other people have posted have all sort of corroborated that. They had bad experiences as well. So the point of this video is, if you're going to use this company or any other pet transportation company, really think twice. I wouldn't risk using this guy at all. And I would certainly if I was you, I would focus on due diligence on any other companies as well. Thank you for watching.